Hello, and welcome to a discussion on Hive running it inside of Windows Subsystem for Linux inside of Windows. So we'll start off with the prerequisites. We'll talk about how you download it, configure it, then run it, and then we'll do some queries. So this is a supplement sort of discussion in addition to the material we've already covered. So your prerequisites, you guessed it, you need to have Windows Subsystem for Linux version 2 enabled. That is the most current version. If you're running a reasonably recent release of Windows, it is likely enabled. So keep that in mind. You likely already have it. If not, wouldn't be a real big deal to get it. You need to have it, Ubuntu installed. I'll be showing 1804 LTS, but it's up to you on what version. You need to have Java and Hadoop installed as well. So if you've got a Hadoop installed, you definitely have Java installed. That's kind of a prereq for it as well. So moving into the next bit, as soon as I can find my window. You start by doing the download. Not terribly surprising. You need to download the bits in order to be able to actually do something with it. So you go to hive.apache.org, and it's going to take you to a place when you go to downloads. It's going to work its way. So you're going to say you want to download a release. You're probably going to want to get the most recent release, and it's at this point going to send you to a mirror. So you can go and download whatever version you're wanting. I'll be showing, I think it's 3.1.2, but it's really up to you of which version you want to use. As always, a good way to do that is inside of your uh, Windows Subsystem for Linux terminal. Go in and do something like a wget-nc, and then copy the URL, paste it in, and what that'll do is download it if it's not already there. If it's already there, then it won't, because it's already exists. So it says, hey, you've already got that particular version, no reason to download it. So once you've downloaded it, the next step is to extract the files. You do that using the tar command. tar-xzf or some variation thereof. Lots of different settings you can use, and essentially extract it out from the what's equivalent basically to a zip file, so a tarball, into a set of directories. So if you take a look at my directory, you can see I've got here the file that was downloaded previously, and then up here I've got the extracted version of it. So once we've done that, we can move into kind of the next thing, which is going to be around configuring it. You want to go and edit your profile, and basically add home Hive or Hive home to the environment, as well as add it to the path, so the bin into the path. And you probably want to edit the hive config.sh in the Hive folder /bin to tell it where Hadoop is. I'm not sure I did that bit, so I'm going to go double check. So we're in and I'm using Visual Studio Code, kicking it off through the gateway thing that got installed whenever you run it the first time. And I don't see Hadoop home here, so to make sure I don't mess it up, should work. So once you've got Hive installed, extracted, and configured, you kind of need to do some work like setting up a schema, that kind of stuff. Back for some reason. All right, so going to go back down into and we're going to use the schema tool. Tell it the type of DB. In this case, we're doing Derby. Double checking myself. And basically, this is essentially should be creating us a. All right, so multiple bindings for an explanation. We might be okay. So let's see what happens if we run Hive. And of course, it's not going well. This is probably because of my Hadoop installation. Let's see what happens if we comment that out and save it and exit. One of the things that you may find is that sometimes the best thing you can do is close the terminal window and open it back up. So I may not be able to do this without doing a good bit of investigation, which is probably not all that interesting. Hey, Alpha. So I was attempting to record the process of getting Hive working inside of WSL. And I've got an issue I'm going to have to work through because I think it may very well be my Hadoop environment that's messed up, not actually Hive. So anyway, what I was going through is kind of the process to go through on running Hive inside of WSL. And not surprising, you download it, you configure it, and then run it, and hopefully that goes well. Obviously, you've got to have Hadoop installed. If you've got Hadoop installed, you've got Ubuntu and Java, and WSL turned on. So you go and download it from a Hive Apache org. They bounce you to a mirror. That's a typical sort of approach. They do mirrored distribution. Once you end up on a mirror, basically you'll do like a wget off of the file. And so typically I do something like copy link address and then paste that into a terminal and do a wget -nc for no clobber and then give it that. And that way it doesn't overwrite it if it's already there. Once it's down, you extract it out with tar, and then you should configure it. And I believe I have most of this right, but I think something's up with my Hive installation, so I'd probably have to reinstall, or I'm sorry, Hadoop installation, because it gives me an error message that makes me think that's what's going on, like it's like multiple bindings, I think is what's going on, or else it can't find the jar, one of the two. But it looks like it actually found it. No such method. And it could be a compatibility between the versions I've got. That probably is what's going on, because I've got, that's probably quicker to figure out. So how are things going with you while I do this? You're right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you shouldn't see an error message like I'm getting. Um, and once you're inside of Hive, you should be able. It should be a command prompt, and you should be able to type in commands like show databases, create database and give it a name, use it, create a table with essentially a schema, insert something into that table, and then select from it. That's what you should be able to do. This, yeah, that's. I think this is, and this is. It's in order to use it, you kind of have to have things set right. I think. Let me just. This shouldn't be necessary, but I'm gonna do home. I don't. It'll probably this sort of thing like you've probably found. Sometimes the best thing you can do is start over, right, and redo it because then it should be. Uh, Trying to run the schema tool and trying to be lazy and copy and paste it. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out what this error is. Um, it's probably this. So trying to see if my friend Google has any answers. But yeah, that's what you should get essentially an interactive prompt. You can also potentially go in um, and do more complex sort of schemas, load data in from a location, um, and so on. So I'm showing on the wrong screen. So let me kick this back off so you can. I'll go through it. I can go ahead and I can put this somewhere so you can actually get to it. Um, but once you get a healthy instance of Hive, you should be able to do these sort of statements. You can create more complex ones, like using the firearms background check with the schema and all that kind of stuff. Notice this is that's the backwards tick. It's not a single quote. It's the one that's over by your escape key under the tilde. So it's a lot of these open source projects utilize it rather than doing like a bracket or something. It's a way of basically saying that this thing is a column or a table name. Um, then you should be able to do like a load data from your a location on your file system, your Linux file system, into your Hive table, right? Overwriting it and so on. Then you should be able to do some queries like select the sum of the permits as total permits, comma state from whatever, group by the total number of permits descending, right? And or group by state, order by the permits descending. And so that's what should work. And now it's just a question of figuring out what I did wrong, and it may be literally reinstall Hadoop. That's probably the best approach. Sadly, that's what you end up having to do a fair amount. So I saw you had your other assignments turned in. Did a good job on them. So congrats on that. And you're past the worst of it. Uh, especially once we get past this stuff. Once you move into Spark, life is a lot easier. Getting Spark up and running is typically easier, in part because it doesn't require the Hadoop right to work. So it's typically as easy as extract it. You could probably put stuff in your path, but I always forget that bit. And you basically are up and running, with Spark. So apparently there's no database. So if I do show databases, it should say there aren't any. Oh, there's the default database, and so you can do create database. Um, and it likes the semicolon. That's one thing with the Spark SQL is it likes semicolons. So now if I say show databases, there'll be two of them. I can do use, and this is basically the same syntax as the Hive syntax, and in fact you can see up and through somewhere through here it mentioned Hive when it was starting up. Yeah, here Hive stats, JDBC, and so on, Hive config. So basically what they did when they created Spark was take Hive and kind of hook it in with a different processing engine, so the Spark engine. And you can do the typical, that should work, although sometimes it's funny about not. Yep, there we go. So, and you can obviously create table, whatever. And then give it, I'm trying to remember the syntax off the top of my head. I guess I can cheat and go back here. Yeah, okay. And again, it likes the, and you get a couple of show tables, right? And so on. So that tells you something of how much easier it is to get at least up and running on a Spark shell compared to the getting Hadoop and Hive running natively inside of Hadoop. Um, Also, while I'm doing, I'm not sure what an example is. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But you can also do PySpark. You have to do this weird dot slash thing if you're in the directory. It doesn't seem to know that the current directory should be in the path, so it's kind of a Linux thing. And so here we're inside of PySpark. Um, um, Read CSV if I had a CSV, and then you give it a name, and it's literally that simple to get up and running. Or probably a better one. This is better. Spark.sql, right? Probably have to do that. And you can obviously that probably values. All right. Insert into this. Uh, oh, that's why. There we go. So you can see it's a fairly decent SQL sort of experience. I haven't found too many things that don't quite work. All in all, works pretty well. So that those two kind of go together, especially depending upon how you do your Spark assignment. They want you to use Scala in the course design. I'm not a huge fan of Scala because I think it's unnecessarily wordy. The syntax isn't all that different, at least to get started. The main thing is making sure you do val. So you can do val df equals spark.sql. Don't think it likes the semicolon. I mean, it's this. There's a few subtleties. Whenever you start writing more complex Scala, it gets a bit more challenging. But in general, it's not a lot of difference really. So, and it's the fact that Python is so popular is part of why I lean towards Python. Either PySpark or SQL is what I'll find myself writing most of the time. The only time I'll ever write something in Scala is literally I don't have a choice. There's some functionality that can only be done inside of Scala, so that's why I do it that way. Make sense? Yeah. And so, like I said, getting Spark up and running is so much easier. It's all right. What is it? All right. Control C then. And so that's basically the stuff you need to get it up and running. Um, that'll tell me anything. Yeah, I'd have to dig into why this thing's not working. It's probably something minor. Is it guava? Not sure that's exactly the same error, but I'll have to spend some time, and once I figure it out, um, I'll update you on whatever it was that was off. Sometimes, like I said, it's easier just to redo it rather than try to fix it, because there's a lot of times it's some weird configuration. It may be because I've got two copies of something on, or it could be that my Hive version and my Hadoop version aren't in sync. It could be lots of stuff. I don't really see a 3.3, but it's hard to say. It could be that switching to a different version would help me as well. But anyway, that's you get a real sense of Hive whenever you're running Spark SQL, because that's basically what it is. I haven't found really any commands that are very different. In fact, you can do things inside of Spark like configure it to do the Hive metastore externally versus kind of internally. Um, and various other things. So I mean, it's very much Hive. It's just that you're not. If you do Hive and Hadoop, you're basically creating a MapReduce job to do the processing. Obviously, if you're doing it inside of Spark and Spark or Spark SQL, you're creating a Spark job, right? Similar sort of concepts. The SQL that you write inside of Spark is essentially compiled into a directed acyclic graph, so a series of operations with order of processing specified, so a computational graph. And then the same sort of concept, other than inside of Hive, you're basically producing a MapReduce job that's doing something very similar. So it's pretty cool, and definitely it's far better than having to write a MapReduce job by hand in Java, which is, if you think about when Hive came along, that's why it was pretty revolutionary, right? Is that it was simplifying that creation even further. So MapReduce came along, made it such that all you had to do is write your mappers and your reducers and maybe a little bit of other stuff, but that's basically it. And it took care of all of the distributed processing for you. Then Hive comes along and takes it one step further, where you just got to write SQL statements, right? So at the point that you're able to essentially declare what you're doing declaratively, it makes a big difference. So I guess with that, I'll probably go ahead and wrap this up, unless you have any questions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The challenge with Hadoop to me is it seems like it's very fickle. It could be lack of knowledge on my part, but it seems like it's very, very picky about how things have to be. So yeah, let me know if I can help. I'll probably be doing the same thing and see if I can get it working, just to show that it is. Sure thing. All right. Thanks for joining. It's always nice to have somebody in the room. Stay safe. We'll talk on Wednesday. Have a good evening.